What's up? Welcome back. John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And this is Gary. It's currently available on Peacock. It has audio description done by Deluxe. It is a documentary about Gary Coleman. So I call these content creation movies. This is what we're doing nowadays. If you have ever existed as a famous person, you're going to get a documentary because they get clicks. Then they get reviews. So yeah, I checked out the Gary Coleman because yes, I was mildly interested in the life of Gary Coleman, which was actually a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. As a non-fan of Gary Coleman, like I didn't grow up with Different Strokes, this ended up being a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Anyway, I've got my purple baseball cap on, black sunglasses, and I'm wearing a Falcon and Winter Soldier t-shirt. So let's talk about Gary. First of all, the audio description is actually really pretty good. So that right off the bat, hiring Deluxe to do this presented itself with people who I think really challenged themselves to try to bring as much audio description to the table for what is like 75% a talking head documentary, and there's a little bit of imagery that they try to pull in here of being able to list things off and describe an image or a shot or text or something, like anytime that they have anything that they can grasp at for even a few seconds, they grab it. Whatever they can describe, however pertinent it is, they're like, oh my God, we have a break. Describe something, I didn't always know who was speaking. That became not a huge problem for me because there aren't that many people who speak. It's just that whole matching a voice to a person and then having to remember it the whole time. And when you have people who kind of have similar voices and you're like, I think that's this person, like we get introduced to somebody and I pretty much followed it because this film doesn't have that many interviews, like that many like unique voices chiming in, but it does have some. They did interview enough people, but they kind of interview like the same handful of people. And what's really interesting about the film is the narrative that it builds. Where the people who are commenting on the film, they have people who start off up top with, like, I love Gary. He was like my favorite person ever. And then like by the end of the film, you're like, I don't know, you seem shady. Like you get that impression about a lot of people. There are a lot of people who start off, and then as the film develops, the film seems to suggest, the narrative of the feature suggests maybe that some of these people were not the best people for Gary's life. And so I thought that was really interesting too. Just the way that they use people. And these people are also commenting. It's like they did the interview. And I think that's why I like this documentary the most, is because I feel like it doesn't pull punches. And a lot of documentaries do. Now, technically Gary Coleman is not around, so they don't have to worry about pissing him off, which is always the preferred choice. A lot of times when you do it for somebody who's still alive, you see them pulling punches. You see documentarians, and then I become even more impressed if I feel like a documentary is actually not holding back with somebody who's still alive. But they're using people in the interviews who are still alive, and they're basically insinuating that these people had life choices that may or may not have contributed to Gary's death. I didn't know about his early life illness and the fact that basically he lived his entire life without kidneys and was constantly going to dialysis. Well, like with that kind of perspective, you're like, damn, that dude made it a long time. Like, I mean, he basically, he since he was like 15, because he got a transplant when he was like 5, and then his body absorbed the kidney. I don't even know how you do that. But his body absorbed his transplant kidney. So he was on dialysis since he was like 15, just like for like his whole life, basically. Um, wow. Just like it really puts everything into perspective for Gary. And he didn't really want to be a part of Hollywood after that. Like he had such a bad experience on Different Strokes, and he made the mistake of having his parents, and his parents were, you know, like a lot of parents we see in Hollywood, that, you know, there's a reason why we have this Jackie Coogan law that protects, when they talk about it too, by the way, they talk about how the parents and his manager got around the Jackie Coogan law, which is they're not supposed to be able to. It's supposed to protect them. A minimum amount of his paycheck is supposed to be put into a trust, so that when he turns 18, he's not broke, you know? So that no matter what it is that you claim that he needs, or you need to buy for him, or to support his, you know, it's like, well, you have 75% of his paycheck that you can do whatever, but 25% of it is going to go in a trust for later on. So when he turns 18, he's not destitute. Yet somehow they managed to fuck that up, which, you know, I mean, when he gets a new lawyer in here, the guy's just like baffled. He's like, I don't even understand. Like he was like going through the paperwork. And there, and then they get pissy, and they file like conservatorship against him, and the judge like pulls Gary into her chambers and has a conversation with him, and is like, obviously this is not somebody who needs a conservatorship. This is just parents who are, you know, trying to take advantage, and she scolds them. And, you know, I mean, it's like everything, you know, wow. I actually found this fascinating. This was a fascinating watch. It was something I just kind of clicked on. I was like, oh, they made a Gary Coleman doc. Well, let's see what this is like. Because it's not like I was intrinsically interested in learning more about Gary Coleman. You know, I wasn't like, oh my God, thank you. I've always wanted to know more. It was very happenstance, but I felt like the whole thing gave me a lot. It gave me a lot. You know, and then just the way the film is cut and edited, how it'll set somebody up, and then you'll find out from as the film progresses, you're like, oh, well, maybe that person was shady. Oh, maybe that person's shady. Oh, that person's definitely shady. You know, I mean, like that. It's just funny how the film progresses, and who sort of ends up by the end of the film, sort of still standing, maybe on some sort of like moral high ground. Very few people. So, yeah, I don't know that it's definitely not going to win any like documentary awards this year or anything like that. But considering the high amount of person documentaries that we get, celebrity documentaries that we get, I actually thought this was one of the better ones. I you know, it introduced me to things I didn't know. It introduced me to perspectives. It didn't feel like it needed to hold back. It didn't even feel like it needed to hold back about the people it was interviewing, you know, and using them as talking heads to like offer commentary. It would have people who are like, I love my son, he was the greatest. And then like, you kind of like hear what that was like, and you're like, oh, well, maybe not, dude. You sound like a terrible person. What the, you know, it's just, yeah, very sort of, I feel like it taps into everything that people like about reality TV in the way that, like, you know, people are just going, damn, all the time, you know, like, you know, you find out stuff and you're like, oh my God, what the hell? What's going on here? But I think the one thing that we miss is Gary commenting on his own life. They don't really have too much of that. Sometimes you get like these really great clips of home video footage where somebody like, you know, waxes poetic about, ruminates, has some deep thoughts on their own life. Despite the amount of cameras that have followed Gary around, everything he says is just sort of like, well, that was the best we found for Gary. It's okay. Well, I guess we'll take what we get then. Um, but certainly an interesting film, and one of those. He's one of those cases of a child actor that could never escape his role. He couldn't really ever be cast as anything else. Everybody just wanted to hear him say, "What you talking about?" It's just, oh my god. So even when he took a break and he didn't want to act, and then when he did want to try to come back, the only thing he ever wanted to anybody ever wanted him to do was, "What you talking about? What you talking about, Will?" He was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's weird. So I feel for the guy. I feel like I have this whole new perspective on Gary Coleman now, and I'm just like, wow. From going from like, I knew nothing because I wasn't a fan, because I still haven't watched Different Strokes. So I've never actually watched anything Gary Coleman's ever done before. Uh, as like an actor, I think like I've only ever seen him sort of like as a celebrity personality that floats through things, you know. But this was interesting. It's on Peacock. You can check it out. Again, the audio description was pretty great. I think Nicole Cirillo was the narrator here, I think. But yeah, it was, even for a documentary, I thought the audio description was above average. So, notably so. There wasn't anything where I was specifically like, oh my God. Probably the documentary that wowed me the most was Skywalkers. Of this year, still Skywalker's A Love Story, has like this one scene where they're describing like hand washing, and it's in such detail where I was just like, this is insane. The level of detail of audio description we're getting right now is just like through the roof. But yeah, I really felt like they tried hard, whereas some other documentaries that I've seen this year, I felt like they just kind of, that's really like, that's it, that's all you've got. Okay. I didn't like Peacock has another documentary this year that I didn't like, Stormy. So I wasn't crazy about that audio description. So I'm giving Gary an A-. I actually, for everything that it is, the only thing that I realize it's kind of sensationalized a little bit, and that's why I'm holding off on the A's, because I'm like, I think this is a little, feel like from the producers of Real Housewives is kind of what I feel like maybe this is coming from, but at the same time it works. It feels like appropriate for the subject matter. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.